Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on the Kauffman Foundation's Project Grant Pathway. We're thrilled to have you here as we walk through the key components of this grant, designed specifically to fund proposals that will design and implement or scale a project that drives impact across our strategic priorities and ultimately moves the Kansas City region closer to our vision of equitable economic mobility. If you joined us at one of our overview webinars, we want to acknowledge that there will initially be some overlap in content as we seek to explain where we've been in developing our grant opportunities and where we're going moving forward. So I'm here as Allison Bajracharya, Chief Impact and Strategy Officer at the Kauffman Foundation, along with my colleagues, Dr. Yvonne Ferguson, our Chief Research, Learning, and Evaluation Officer, and Meredith Walrafen and Jeremy Davis, our Impact Officers, who've been taking the lead on the design of the grants pathway. A quick review of our agenda. We'll begin with an overview or strategic refresh, talk a little bit about grant-making relaunch. I will do a quick overview of our strategic priorities and our grant-making pathways. Then we'll hear from Dr. Yvonne about our approach to metrics to track impact and reporting. Finally, Jeremy and Meredith will take you through the project grant, the overall objectives of this grant, and an overview of the application process. And broadly what we're looking for in a quality application. Then we'll open it up to questions and answers. So I'll start with our grant-making relaunch. In developing our vision, we wanted to ensure that our approach not only honors the legacy of our founder, Ewing, Marion Kauffman, but also reflects the needs and aspirations of our community today. Our strategic refresh is the culmination of extensive research and community engagement. Over the last year, we've been gathering insights, reflecting on our previous work, and considering how we can be more effective driving economic mobility. Our vision is clear. By 2035, we want to see a Kansas City where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of background. And we want to be clear. When we say Kansas City, we mean the 6-county region: Cass, Clay, Jackson, Johnson, Platte, and Wyandotte. That doesn't mean that you have to be located here, but it does mean that you have to propose a project that actively does or has the potential to have significant impact in these counties. So first, our priorities. We didn't develop these priorities in isolation. We conducted a series of community conversations to gather feedback and learn from people who know Kansas City best, including many of you. We aligned what we heard from the community with national and local research on strategies that are most effective at closing the wealth gap. Keeping in mind our vision and taking into account this data from the community and from our research, we identified the following 3 priorities. First, college access at completion. And what we mean by that is ensuring more students not only enroll in college, but also complete their degrees. Second, workforce and career development, connecting people with the skills and opportunities needed to succeed in today's job market. And third, entrepreneurship, supporting new and existing businesses that can drive economic growth and job creation. Our why behind this? Well, we determined that if we concentrate on these 3 priority areas and collaborate with the key organizations that drive impact in those areas, we can meaningfully narrow and move to close the economic gaps that persist in our community, particularly for those living far below the median income in the Kansas City region. The why behind our priorities is simple yet powerful. We are committed to closing gaps for the most underserved communities. Our how? Well, the feedback we received was invaluable and has shaped every aspect of the strategic refresh. We heard loud and clear that people want more than just resources. They want a foundation that is engaged, responsive, and deeply connected to the community. So after we developed our vision and our strategic priorities, we spent the last few months clarifying our focus areas, developing new grant-making pathways, and aligning on how we will track our impact. Our grant-making focus areas there are 4 of them. They include essential competencies and skills, education and employer connection, participation and belonging, and equitable access. These focus areas apply to each of the different grant types available. I will give a quick high-level overview of the grants, but this information is also available on kauffman.org/funding, just so you know, because there's quite a bit of it. So to drill a little bit deeper on these focus areas, we have shared a downloadable document of examples And we provide these examples to help clarify our definitions of essential competencies and skills, education, employer connection, participation and belonging, and equitable access. So you'll see here several examples, a couple that I'll just highlight, but again, these are intended to be illustrative and by no means complete. So for example, essential competencies and skills. One example of this could be apprenticeships and internships that build both technical and durable skills essential for success in that career. For education and employer connection, an example could be early college programming in high school that provides job training and certification. For participation and belonging, we know that it isn't enough just to ensure that people enter into these opportunities. We know that they need to feel seen and belong. One opportunity or one example, this could be childcare or transportation stipends as part of a workforce training or a college program. Equitable access, when we're saying equitable access, we mean in regards to funding and affordability. So one example of that could be policy engagement to increase state aid for college tuition. So with our vision in mind, our priorities clear, and our focus areas named, we've developed a number of new grant-making opportunities. Several of you are already familiar with these, but I'm going to go through them quickly at a high level. The first is our capacity building grants. So these grants opened in late August and actually closed last week. These are designed to help organizations strengthen their internal operations so they can have a greater impact. So our first window for these closed last week, but we will open them again in the spring. The second is collective impact grants. These grants are for coalitions of high-capacity organizations that are working together to drive systems-level change. We're particularly interested in projects related to education, employer connection, as well as equitable access. Applications are currently open for collective impact grants and close November 1. That's a two-part grant application process. So the first part, which is due November 1, is a planning grant. Project grants, which we're going to dive deeper into momentarily. That's what we're here for today. These are intended to provide funding for specific projects that are aligned with our strategic priorities, whether it's a new initiative or scaling of an existing one. Letters of interest open today. Research grants. These are intended to support research that deepen our understanding of the issues we're addressing and translate findings into practical solutions. Letters of interest for these also open today, and we will have a webinar on research grants tomorrow. Additionally, we have sunset grants. So for organizations that have received historical funding from us, but no longer aligned with our strategic priority areas and focus areas, this is a one-time funding opportunity to ensure you have funding to transition from Kauffman funding to other support opportunities. These applications are open until March 31st. Finally, in 2025, we're launching the Kauffman Uncommon Leadership Award. This award will honor leaders who are making a significant impact in the Kansas City region through innovative, generous, and meaningful work. All right, that was a lot of information, but that was intended to be a high-level overview of our vision, our priorities, our focus areas, and our grant-making pathways. As I mentioned, there's much more information in detail on our website, including recordings from our previous webinars. I'm now excited to pass it over to Dr. Yvonne, who's going to talk a little bit about our approach to metrics, measurement, and reporting.
Thank you, Allison. So throughout our strategic planning process, we leverage research and data to guide our decision-making around our strategic priorities and our focus areas, as Allison discussed. We selected priorities that are evidence-based drivers of economic mobility, and we selected focus areas that are evidence-based drivers of our strategic priorities. That said, we are launching this strategy knowing that we don't have all the answers. We must engage with community to build greater understanding of what closes economic mobility gaps. And we are really excited to collaborate with researchers, practitioners, policymakers, community members, for them to ask questions, test hypotheses, and dig deeper into our focus areas to build collective understanding of what drives outcomes. Our approach to evaluation and grant making is in the spirit of collaborative learning. So this slide mirrors the questions around metrics and the expectations around reporting that are communicated in the application portal. You'll see that we have asked applicants to tell us if they are collecting specific economic mobility metrics and to share additional metrics they collect and track. We ask these questions not because we're asking you to report on these specific metrics, but to learn from and understand how organizations aligned with our strategic priorities track their impact. If you do not collect these metrics, that is perfectly fine. Again, if you don't collect these metrics, that is fine. Again, we are asking these questions around metrics and the application in the spirit of collaborative learning. So next you'll see on the slide our expectations around reporting and evaluation. For project grantees, we will ask you to participate in ongoing cohort-style convenings and check-ins to share learnings with the foundation and grantee peers. We'll also expect you to collaborate with the foundation in the development and implementation of a formal evaluation plan. So why are we partnering with project grantees around evaluation? Well, again, we are approaching our grant making in the spirit of collaborative learning, and we really want to collaborate with grantees to answer questions around the impact of their projects. We also know that there are many, many organizations that are doing great work across our strategic priorities, and they are leveraging into those priorities to close economic mobility gaps. But we truly won't truly know, and we certainly can't learn from and scale their work unless we can actually collect evidence and measure impact. So together with the project grantees, the research, learning, and evaluation team hopes to identify metrics and approaches that truly get to assessing economic mobility, identify key performance indicators that will help us assess impact, and also begin to build our collective knowledge and understanding of what grantee activities truly lead to economic mobility related outcomes for our community. So now that I've shared about the metrics and expectations around reporting and evaluation, I'm going to turn it over to Meredith, who will share more detail about the project grant. Meredith?
Great. Thanks, Yvonne. I'm excited to present to you the project grant pathway. We have spent the last 3 months building and iterating on the grant purpose, application, rubric, and review process. We also received and leveraged invaluable feedback from existing grantees on our language and our application process. So project grants provide funding for an organization to design and implement or scale a multi-year, high-quality project that is in alignment with our strategic priorities and our focus areas. Project grants were specifically designed to fund projects that drive outcomes across our strategic priorities and to ultimately move us towards our 10-year vision of closing economic mobility gaps in the Kansas City region. In service of this vision, we're seeking applicants that have a demonstrated history of success in driving impact to support equitable economic mobility. Or ideal organizations are high capacity or high impact and are putting forward a compelling project that has tremendous potential to achieve measurable results at significant depth or scale in service of equitable economic mobility. And again, while organizations are not required to be in KC, an ideal applicant is either located here or has significant awareness of the Kansas City landscape and existing relationships. We are seeking proposals. An ideal proposal or project would scale an already high impact program and approach, or proposals to design and implement new programs or approaches that have tremendous potential for impact with a strong research basis or success in peer cities. So project grant proposals should be multi-year projects requesting a minimum of $250,000 or more per year. The size of these grants is intentional. Our goal of closing economic mobility gaps in the Kansas City region requires significant investment in strong organizations to do powerful, scalable work. I do want to call out, you may have seen on the website that project LOI were listed as rolling. Please note that we have changed this to more accurately reflect our process. We will have 2 funding cycles per year, and LOI will only be accepted during those windows. So I'll talk through this upcoming timeline for the Q2 2025 funding disbursement. We will be accepting LOI until January 10th, 2025. So from today, October 15th until January 10th. We will begin reviewing LOI on November 15th. We are encouraging applicants to submit earlier rather than later, as we will be reviewing LOI in the order that they are received. We aim to notify all full proposal invitees by January 31st of 2025. Full proposals will then be due on February 21st, 2025. And both notification of award and funding will happen in Q2 of 2025. And I'll pass it over to Jeremy.
Thank you, Meredith. That was a great overview. And now I'm prepared to talk about the application process. As mentioned, the project grant application is now open and will carry us into Q2 of 2025 when grants will be awarded. With that, there are a few steps in the process that you should be aware of. So let's take a deeper look. First, the application process starts on our website, where you can explore funding opportunities. Please start by reviewing our 2035 vision, our strategic priorities, and focus areas that we've identified. The foundation is only funding grants that align to our strategic direction, so please make sure you read up on our strategy. Then explore our funding opportunities. We have multiple grant pathways, as Allison mentioned, so make sure you find the pathway that makes the most sense for your organization and the proposals that you're presenting. You will find for every grant category an eligibility quiz made up of a few yes or no questions. This is designed to make sure you understand the minimum requirements to apply for the grant. It's about alignment to our vision, priorities, and focus areas. Please remember that the criteria is not that you have to be Kansas City based, but that your organization has the potential to drive impact in Kansas City. Next, the project grant pathway. If the project grant pathway is the right pathway and you are eligible for the project grant, you will be directed to our grants portal to complete a letter of interest or LOI. The LOI is not an actual letter that you create and submit, but rather is preliminary information that you input online about your project grant application. There are specific questions you are required to respond to, and you can download these questions on our website before you register your organization and start completing the LOI in our grants portal. I highly recommend you review those questions, as they will help you determine whether this grant makes sense for your organization. Next, once you have completed the questions and submitted your letter of interest, we will review the LOI, and selected organizations will be invited to submit a full proposal. The full proposal includes answering additional questions and submitting further information about your project. As the final step of the process, the Kauffman Foundation will review all full applications and interview the finalists to see their work in action. As mentioned, in Q2 of 2025, selected applicants will then be awarded a project grant. Now let's move on into what sort of content is in the LOI and the application questions. We've worked hard in response to feedback to only put forward questions that really drive at the criteria we have developed. Again, to give you a preview of what questions are asked and what information is required as part of the LOI and application process, we made the questions available right now at the Kauffman.org website. These questions can be found in PDF form and downloaded now as you consider if projects is the right fit. So make sure to check those out. But for now, we want to give you an idea of the types of things we ask for in the LOI and application questions. We check for alignment to strategic priorities and focus areas. We ask about organizational capacity and expertise. We check for efficiency of budget and the implementation plan. And then also we ask about the impact for target beneficiaries. All right, so now, finally, let's explore what type of project grants are of particular interest to the Kauffman Foundation. On our website, on the project grants page, you will see these additional areas of interest. Under each of our focus areas, we have identified particular areas of interest to the foundation. We want to really emphasize that we invite any and all applications that align to our strategic priorities and focus areas. Our number one criteria for evaluating a grant application is potential for impact. So do not worry if your proposal does not address these areas of interest specifically. If you have a high impact proposal that is not aligned to these particular areas of interest, we still welcome that proposal. So with that, we are eager to learn about projects and receive LOIs in these areas of interest. Under essential competencies and skills, we are particularly interested in proposals that increase career and workforce exposure as early as middle school. Also, that incorporate entrepreneurial mindsets and experiences into high school and college. Under participation and belonging, we are particularly interested in applications that reduce or remove participation and persistence barriers for entrepreneurs, learners, and workers. Examples of these barriers to be removed are participation stipends, transportation issues, child care, health insurance, and other wraparound supports. Under education and employer connection, we are particularly interested in proposals that build pathways, learning models, and feedback cycles that support job placement, retention, and advancement. For equitable access, we are particularly interested in applications that provide sources of capital that move historically under-resourced entrepreneurs from startup to growth or sustainability phase. And then finally, there are a few additional areas of interest that do not squarely align to a single focus area, but we also invite proposals that reduce fragmentation within and build explicit connections across education, workforce, and entrepreneurship ecosystems to facilitate access and ease of navigation for participants. And then also proposals that strengthen the social impact sector in the Kansas City region by funding intermediaries that provide resources to frontline smaller organizations that are aligned to the foundation's strategic priorities. Again, we want to reiterate that these areas of interest are things we want to call out, but we certainly welcome all applications that align with our strategic priorities and focus areas. That concludes the information that I would like to cover. And Allison, back to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeremy, Meredith, Dr. Yvonne. That was fantastic. I know that was a lot of information, so we do want to open it up to questions. I will field the questions and we'll respond to some of them, and we'll then prompt my colleagues to respond to others. There may be moments of awkwardness, so I'll just name that as I'm channeling questions and figuring out who's the best respondent is. So just please bear with us as we navigate through these, and we'll do the best we can to answer all the high-level questions we get today. Part of our grant making approach this year is really around transparency and consistency, and so our goal is to get as much information out to as many interested applicants as possible, but we are not going to go deep and specific for case-by-case organizational guidance. So there may be questions we don't answer for that reason, but for questions that are relevant to multiple applicants, we encourage you to put them in the Q&A, and we will do our best to respond to them. And then if there are questions we don't answer, please follow up with our email at the end of the session. Okay, so let's just start with the question about Kansas City. So only projects impacting the Kansas City region are considered. So there is some nuance here. As we started with, our vision is really around making Kansas City a national model for equitable economic mobility. The only way we are going to get there in the next 10 years, because that is a very ambitious vision, is to foreground impact in Kansas City. So that does not mean you have to specifically be in Kansas City, but it does mean you need to demonstrate a real commitment to Kansas City and potential for impact in Kansas City through your learnings, through what you're sharing, through what you're doing, and create a case for how what you're doing, if you're not in Kansas City, is relevant to Kansas City, and how that is a really informed proposal, not something you're just sort of drawing out of thin air. The next question is, if we submit early, could we be notified earlier than January 31st to submit a full application? Jeremy, do you want to respond to that one?
Absolutely. Yeah, and we're as Meredith mentioned, really in January is really the latest we want to invite the full applications based off of when the LOI is submitted. So we're really emphasizing the earlier you can submit a letter of interest, the better, and the greater the likelihood you'll hear back sooner. If you were to move on to a full application, you'd hear back sooner and have more time to work on the application. But really, getting that letter of interest in as soon as you can kind of really helps to precipitate that. So we're saying by, that January date is the latest that you'd be notified of a full application if you move on in the process. But the earlier, really the better.
Thanks, Jeremy. Let's see. Can an organization request 250,000 in the first 2 years of the project, then a lesser amount in year 3 as it becomes established? And is there a maximum term of years for a specific project? So it is possible to request a variable amount over time. The point is we set 250 as the minimum in year 1 because we really want to demonstrate our commitment to impact in these grants. And so we are looking for larger scale grants, but if over time you need less funding, that is okay. In terms of what is the upper limit on time, we know that impact, it's really hard to get to impact in year 1. And so that's why we really are reinforcing that this should be multi-year. If you think you can get to your impact in 2 years, great. If it's going to take, 3 or 4, that's great. If it's longer than 5, it's probably too long for this window. So really encourage you to think about what impact looks like between 2 and 4, maybe 5 years at max. Let's see. For pathway and career development projects, are there certain industries that the foundation is interested in specifically? No, we are really industry agnostic. We are looking to, the assets in the community for people to build on those and recognize where there are great assets already or where there are gaps and how you can help drive even closer or greater impact connection across industry partners and training opportunities, or create more great opportunities for the community as you think about training and workforce and career opportunities. So long as the scopes are different, can the same applicant submit more than one application? Meredith, you want to answer that one?
Yes, definitely. We, with the exception of a very large organization like a university, we are asking folks to really prioritize their focus, focusing on one project, with the goal being that, we're looking for impact, and we want people to be able to really devote their time and energy to the impact of the project that they're committing to. So there's some exceptions to that, but for the most part, we'd like folks to focus on one application.
Okay, great. So there's a question of where exactly is the LOI form located? If someone who is behind the scenes on our team wouldn't mind putting the link in the chat, if you haven't already done that, that'd be terrific. So we do have an updated open link on our website. It's under the project grants, gives you a little bit of detail that we've just covered. You will first respond to our eligibility quiz, which should take maybe 5 minutes. And then assuming you're eligible, you'll get a link to the letter of interest. The window again is open between now and January 10th. We'll review applications on an ongoing basis, and we'll notify people by the end of January if you're moving forward, and your application will be due February 21st. We then intend to make gifts in Q2 of 2025, so later in the spring. Let's see. Okay, does the foundation fund other 501c nonprofits besides the 501c3, such as 501c4, and nonprofit organizations fall under 501c6? So yes, we are supportive of ER and PRI grants. We cannot support political work, and so you have to be compliant with a focus on charitable purposes, but assuming what you're intending to do through your project grant is focused on charitable purposes, and you are not a 501c3, you can still apply. We encourage you to reach out to our email address so we can talk through some of the nuances. The application review process may take slightly longer just because there are more nuances for non-501c3s, but we are certainly open, historically have been supportive, and will continue to be supportive. Is it better to focus on one focus area, or is it better to make sure we target all the focus areas? So there's no pressure whatsoever to focus on all the focus areas. We know that's really hard to do. We're not looking for unicorns here. We are looking for impact. If you happen to overlap with more than one focus area, that's fantastic, but certainly don't feel like you need to do some sort of gymnastics to cover all four. Okay, what do you view as a primary difference between submitting a project grant or collective impact grant if you have strong partners doing systems change? Anyone on my team want to jump into this? Otherwise, I'm happy to.
Sure, I can do that. I would say that we're really looking for with collective impact. We're really looking for coalitions that have experience and have already been working on or taking steps towards the systems change that they're seeking to achieve. I would say if you're a collaborative of organizations doing a project together, we really do value collaboration in the work that we support, and so we would encourage collaborations. There's another question in here about can you apply collaboratively with another organization for a project, and you can. We encourage folks to do that, but I think really, how established is your coalition in working towards achieving systems change? And that to me is the primary difference in whether you decide collective impact versus projects.
Great, thank you, Meredith. Let's see. Okay, do we anticipate being the only funder of the project, or is there an expectation for the grantee to include additional funders? We're agnostic here. We definitely, we recognize that some projects are achievable within the budget that one funder can support, such as ours, 250,000 plus per year. If you're pursuing other funders, that's great. In the LOI, there's an opportunity to say, what is the budget you are seeking? What is your overall project budget? And so if you do have other funders, you can name those and acknowledge those. There's also a question related to that of, can we apply for a project for projects starting January 1st? So keep in mind, these projects won't be funded until late spring. And so if you are starting a project with other funding, this would be intended to supplement and be additive to the funding you have so that you can continue to grow, scale, and expand, then yes. If you're hoping that this will backfill a project that's starting January 1st, I don't think that makes sense. Let's see. Can multiple people from an organization's team have accounts to access the same LOI form, or does it need to funnel through one person? That is a great question. I think there's one account. Jeremy, it looked like you might have a better answer than I have there.
Yeah, we can have several active members to have access to an account, so they'd have access to the LOI, the full application, but we are limited as far as the number of people who have access. So it could be multiple people, I think up to 4 or 5 on an account. So you want to be strategic about who has access, who needs to have input into the information being submitted, that sort of thing. There is flexibility there, but there is not infinite flexibility to have a lot of eyes on it. So we'll give that caveat, but your team can have access. Multiple people can.
And I might jump in and add that someone else asked about updating the contacts. If you have been in the Flex system before, if you email grantee helpdesk at Kauffman.org with the changes you'd like to make, they can get those changes made for you.
Okay, I see another question related to collaboration. I know Meredith touched on this, but I want to repeat. So if you are collaborating with other partners and you're pursuing project grant, that is fantastic. I think we recognize that there are lots of opportunities for collaboration and different ways to think about how we grow the pie. And so we certainly are excited to hear about collaborations. In the project grant instance, there will only be one application, so you can speak to who your partners are in the LOI and the application, but the funding would go to one specific entity. So you all will just need to figure out how to navigate that. Collective impact, as Meredith mentioned, is really designed with a coalition in mind. So one entity is applying, but they are applying very specifically on behalf of a coalition, excuse me, projects. If you choose to do that, that's great. You'll just need to articulate how that work is going to play out, what accountability looks like, what impact looks like, et cetera. Let's see. Okay, there's a question, would projects that utilize technology as a delivery method for programmatic offerings be considered? Yes, if you're thinking about using technology to advance impact in a way that aligns with our priorities and our focus areas, and even some of the interest areas Jeremy named, that's fantastic. Okay. Okay, this is a great question. So the webinars have been clear that you prefer we apply for one grant at a time. Will there be some flexibility and overlap? So we really prefer there's not overlap. So if you've applied for a capacity grant and you actually would prefer to apply for a project grant, we understand that can happen. Reach out and we can figure out how to put your capacity grant on pause for review. That said, if you're applied for a capacity grant and want to see how that plays out, and then a year from now, when our LOI process opens again, or even in the spring when our LOI process opens, you could apply for project at that time. We just don't want you managing two grants concurrently unless there's an exception where you are a large institution with distinct departments doing work that is aligned with our priority areas and focus areas. Again, if that's not clear, there's a real nuance to your situation, feel free to reach out and we can see how to walk you through that more specifically. There's a question around scholarships and stipends. Yes, there's flexibility in how project grants are used. And so if you are an organization that intends to use the funding to offer stipends to whomever, to help with childcare or transportation or community engagement or whatever that may look like, that is perfectly acceptable. If you're an organization thinking about using the funding for scholarships, that also is acceptable. We don't fund scholarships directly, but we fund organizations that give scholarships. Do you prefer new projects or projects seeking to scale? Anyone want to jump in on that one?
I think we're open to both. Not necessarily with a preference, but we do want to reiterate, new projects. We want there to be a good basis, maybe to where there's semblance of this, working within the organization, or there's research to show that, that the project could be successful with the organization here in Kansas City, that sort of thing. For those projects seeking to scale. So we're looking for, a track record of outputs for that particular project and program, and then how it's looking to grow. So whether it's new or whether it's something looking to scale, again, it's about, how it drives impact, the potential or proven impact of the project and program itself, and kind of how that shows up. So no preference, we're open to both, but again, we're looking at impact, and then the likelihood of impact and success towards our big overarching goal of equitable economic mobility.
Okay, great. Yvonne, there's still some questions coming in about location.
I see them. Yay.
What do you think about that?
I'm excited. So the ones that I've seen around location have been specifically around research projects. So I see that there are some research folks that are interested in the research grants. There is a webinar tomorrow for that where we will get into detail, and I hope the people behind the screen can put a link for folks to register for that webinar tomorrow. But in terms of a criteria for the research projects, you do not have to be KC based. However, Your research project should have the potential to impact or inform efforts to close economic mobility gaps in the Kansas City region. So again, you don't have to be based in KC to apply for those research grant opportunities. There is a PDF, just as with the project grants, there's a PDF where you can look at what we ask for in the LOI for the research opportunity as well.
Thanks, Yvonne. Okay, there's a great question about budget. What is the maximum that could be requested? And do we have a maximum number of project grants we are going to support? So I have a bit of non-answers for both of those. On the latter, we're really looking for quality and aligned proposals. And so we're not putting a maximum out there now. We're going to review applications as there's letters of interest as they come in. And then we'll move those forward to applications. Just because we ask you to apply for an application does not guarantee, but it means that we do see alignment. So there is not a maximum number we're working from. In terms of the budget, we also didn't put an upper range on that, not to be tricky, but just because we recognize that projects and impact, the budget for those can range tremendously depending on context, scale, who you're working with. Is this new? Is this something that's already, you have really encouraging data and case studies from? So we're trying to be open-ended, but I think a general rule of thumb to think about is there's essentially a ladder of impact we're thinking about with our grants. So our capacity grants are for organizations that are building capacity. That's really internal capacity. And those maximums are $250 per capacity grant. These project grants start at $250. We didn't put an upper limit, but our collective impact grants start at $5 million over 3 years. So I would certainly not propose something more than $5 million. I think about $5 million over 3 years. Loosely, $1.5 million might be the cap, but we don't have a tried and true line on that. We really want to get a better sense of what you need to achieve impact, recognizing the urgency behind the work at hand and our very ambitious vision.
If it's okay, I might jump in and go back to the questions about location. Again, in the Dr. Yvonne mentioned the PDF on the website. There are that might be helpful for folks who might still have questions about the things they're interested in proposing. The specific questions in there kind of really get at what we're looking to see. So I might direct folks there if you're still have questions about that.
Excellent. I see one more question we haven't gotten to, and so if there are any others, please put it in the chat. And my team, please let me know if there's any that I am missing. But the question is, under areas of interest you discussed, provide sources of capital. Can you elaborate upon this and provide examples? So organizations may not be the direct provider of capital, but the connector or even provide a path to entrepreneurship. Yes, that's exactly what we mean. There could be organizations that are providing direct access to capital through innovative methods that need additional funding to grow that fund or to work with others to bring others to the table. There could be organizations such as ESOs that are bringing entrepreneurs in the space and trying to connect entrepreneurs to capital. There could be organizations that are trying to bring financial institutions together to think about how to change practices. So there is increased capital flowing to entrepreneurs in Kansas City, especially entrepreneurs who historically have had very limited access to capital. So those are some of the notions there. We're open to other ideas as well. Okay, you guys heard me. So we're going to have some more questions coming in. Is it 250 total over a 3-year period, or is it 250K annually over a 3-year period? Jeremy, you want to take that one?
Yes, absolutely. So we're looking at project grants are 250 per year for at least 2 years. So you're looking at requesting $500,000 over a 2-year period as a minimum. So think of that. Yeah, that $250,000 is a floor each year for the number of years that you determine is beneficial for your organization or that it takes to carry out the project. So again, yeah, 250 each year for a minimum of 2 years.
Okay, great. I love this question. I'm wondering if for project grants, is the focus on direct service programs that address your priority areas more short-term, and collective impact is more focused on system change, institutional transformation work that may be longer term. So collective impact is absolutely focused on system change. I think project provides us like a little bit of a hybrid. It could really be on programmatic growth that is intended to get at system change. It could be focused at the first step in system change. It could be really at, program design and then growth that ultimately could create the conditions for system change. So there is some flexibility there. And when I say program, that could translate to direct services or indirect as well. Is there an opportunity for feedback once the LOI is submitted? For example, if the LOI is of interest and aligned, but the amount requested is too high, would there be an opportunity for feedback versus just a straight no to the LOI? Jeremy or Meredith, you want to answer that, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I think I'd say that, the budget is one element of the proposal, and we will be looking holistically at the LOI as it comes in. So I think that I don't know that we would necessarily provide feedback and have people resubmit or anything, but I think it's possible that an invitation to an application might still happen, and we would in that process ask for have a conversation or ask for more clarification in the full proposal.
Great. So along the lines, it says if you're not invited to submit a full proposal after the LOI, if your full proposal is not awarded, will the grantee receive feedback? So it depends. I think if we get a small number of proposals and we have space and time to provide some feedback, we will. In the event that we get a lot of proposals, I don't want to set up expectations that we can provide feedback to everyone, because that would not be realistic. For those that move forward in their applications, and if you're not funded, there will be feedback. All right, I'm gonna give us a minute, see if any other questions come in. Okay, great. If our religious affiliated organization is still able to apply if the project is not to support direct religious activities. Yes, we cannot fund direct religious activities. We can fund activities that are for charitable purposes. Yvonne, Jeremy, Meredith, is there anything else you'd like to make sure we cover, or anything that may be worth reiterating, just because we've shared so much information?
Well, I'm kind of bummed that people didn't ask a lot of evaluation questions, so I'm going to add that. So just as a reminder, for the project grantees, we will be asking you to participate in ongoing cohort style convenings and check-ins. And again, that's for us to learn, the foundation to learn, and also for grantees to learn from their peers. And we'll be collaborating with the foundation. You'll be collaborating with us in the development and implementation of a formal evaluation if you are one of the grantees. And again, this is not meant to be over burdensome or anything, but again, in the spirit of collaborative learning is why we have those expectations around reporting and evaluation.
Thanks, Yvonne. Meredith, Jeremy, anything else you want to make sure we reiterate?
Check out the PDF on the website. I think that's the place to go to get the best idea.
Agreed. And yeah, just take some time to learn more about the opportunity. I think I'd want to reiterate that you were talking about really impactful work that's driving towards impact with this grant. So that kind of really justifies the really large amounts, the multiple years, that sort of thing. We're really looking at kind of moving the needle here towards our overall goal. So just kind of remember that. And if you decide that this opportunity is great for your organization, the right opportunity, just to reiterate that to get the letter of interest in sooner than later. So as you kind of explore the opportunity, if it's a fit, go ahead and get that LOI in. It's just what I like to reiterate. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. Yvonne, there is actually one final question for you, and then we'll close out. So our evaluations, the duration of the funding window, do you want to talk about what the time?
Yeah, so the evaluations, we want to emphasize evaluation from the start. And so it will depend on how long that your project is for. If it's 2 years, 3 years, we'll determine that if you're a grantee. But so yeah, so that's the answer to that window. It depends. It depends. Most likely it will be for the duration of that funding window, but it depends on, you know, when your funding window is, and will definitely be in co-creation and co-collaboration with all the grantees.
Excellent. And who will participate in the learning cohorts?
Who the main grantee?
Like one, the primary lead, or is there a designee, or how do you think about that?
Well, that's a good question. It depends on the structure of the project and who makes the most sense to be involved in that evaluation. If your organization or however your project is set up has like an evaluation person, that is something that who we could connect with. But it might be the main project manager or the main lead for the project. So it will depend on who that person is.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so I will close us out with that question. Meredith and Jeremy, thanks for doing a fantastic job thinking through all the design aspects of this grant. Yvonne, thank you for leading us through metrics and approach to research and evaluation. Everyone who joined us, thank you so much. We know this is a really busy time of year and appreciate your time and interest. We are going to have a couple upcoming office hours, so please stay tuned for more information on those. If you do have more high-level questions that haven't been answered, that's a great place to come. Otherwise, please email us if there are specific questions that, again, aren't super specific to your organization, but will help ensure you can have the information you need to move forward in the application. Please reach out. And there will be a recording available and you can share it broadly. So thank you all again. We look forward to learning and engaging with you and appreciate your time and wish you well.